All right, welcome back to the second SOVL Discord Cup, 1000-point edition. This is our second match, and it's going to be against Hiimori. In fact, it's going to be Revenge of the Ratkin today, because once again, just as we did in the first match, we are up against Ratkin clans. If you didn't see the last one, go check that out, because I cover my list. We were running Dwarves into this. With that said, let's just jump straight into taking a look at my opponent's list. And may seem like a little bit of deja vu up against Rats again. And yes, while they do kind of have a similar setup with a core of infantry around a Doom Bell plus good heavy amount of shooting and monstrosities, this one is actually quite a spicy take. And there are a few really important differences. First, just one commander, which I think is kind of smart. Similar to the last one, if you've got that, if you're not going all in on Doom Bell, all kind of infantry with 2 Doom Bells, I think just one is just fine. They've been at 1000 mals, and as we go through, you'll notice actually a lot of shooting, even though they've got fewer long rifles this time. We'll talk about between 1000 mals and throwing stars, and then the flamers, which are really interesting choice. We'll come on to them. Yeah, just like a lot of shooting to pair with that Hex of Ruin from the Warlock. Also unyielding. I'm assuming that's there. Maybe it's just like leftover points, but I guess it's kind of helpful against assassin style characters that just want to dive in and take the Warlock out. Yeah, in terms of the core, it's got a couple of big units of conscripts and then 2 units of the Ratkin skulkers with the throwing stars and the 2-hand weapons going to be really nasty with that Hex of Ruin, both in that shooting phase and in combat. And then instead of the 4 long rifles, this time we've got 2 units of long rifles, 4 in each. 2 units of 3 flamers. This is a unit you don't see much. It's range 12, D3 hits, power 5, and that's D3 per model, so effectively D3 3d3 power 5. I think this actually lines up really nicely against Dwarves with their high defense. I'd probably rather see more units of long rifles. I think these are maybe slightly better, and then just the 1 monstrosity. So I think game plan is going to be similar, to be honest, to the last one. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Trying to keep those copters safe, and yeah, let's get into the match. All right, once again, SOVL Replay is having a bit of a hiccup, so we are using my video recording from the game itself. This is after my deployment, and yeah, once again, it's kind of, I was thinking, not sure entirely what to do, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's one other catapult hiding down here, similar to the last match. I kind of put 1 unit of miners with the veterans in order to, first tag this objective and then hopefully follow and just hold, even if they go down with a bit more punching power on the other side. Here I can use this terrain. My opponent's list doesn't really have, much at all that's kind of really fast, outside of, I guess there's the monstrosity and the Doombo itself, but I'm not really expecting anything to be deployed on this side, threatening to come around. So yeah, let's take a look at how my opponent has deployed. So also going a bit more heavy on this same side, it looks like. A lot of their shooting at the back as expected, and kind of not entirely sure what to make of it. I suppose one downside of deploying far up like this is it means my opponent's flamers are going to get shots from turn 1. My opponent gets final activation, which I don't think is a huge deal for them, but final activation would be a huge deal for me. if that makes sense. So yeah, still pretty nice for them, and unfortunate, although first move does mean I move immediately up to block both the movement from both of these skulkers. And you see my opponent responds by immediately popping Hex of Ruin, which I don't think I was necessarily anticipating. I was thinking, well, if I move them up, yes, they can do the throwing starts from both of these units into it. It should be okay. And also, it's kind of blocking in like other shooting getting involved. And if this unit survives, it means we're kind of drawing the battle line and kind of pinning my opponent back, hopefully ticking up some objective points for a turn or two. These other units get involved, yada, yada, yada. This one is going to be contested kind of no matter what. I don't think there's an opportunity for me. If I did pop Hunter's Call, I could possibly get these to the edge here, blocking the movement of the conscripts onto it, but then pretty sure the monstrosity would be able to get around into the flank, and that wouldn't be great either. So yeah, a couple of Bam Bam players immediately moving to block, immediately responding with the Hex. So let's see if this unit can survive. What is it going to be? I think there are units of like 16 and 17. And I think they're only power 2, the throwing stars, in a short range, but I mean, when you throw enough of them, they're gonna deal some damage. I also notice I have this shot here onto the long rifles, which in this matchup I'm not quite as... I mean, in the last matchup, in those early turns, they were the obvious target. I've actually got this here, and I think I've got the right here. So I'm probably taking my time here, thinking about exactly where I want to go. Instead, not sure if that's the wisest of choices there, but we roll average on the hits, but get quite unfortunate on my opponent's saves. Only deal 3 there, and with the marksman rifle, I think I decide here to go into the flamers instead, hoping to like pick one off with those 2 shots. I do have cruelty on the ranger captain, so I am to get lucky with the 2 hits here, but only get 1. So annoyingly aren't able to take out one of those flamers. In hindsight, probably could have saved the activation for that unit. After the shooting, I did want to move it around to protect it from things like this unit of flamers, but maybe that was a little bit hasty with my commander's unit. And then yeah, my opponent, a good player, sees the same thing as me. Is deciding how they want to protect these long rifles from the stone thrower shot. And in the end, rather than moving the long rifles themselves, they just decide to block the shot with the monstrosity, which is also covering this objective. There's no way I can tag it without taking a charge there. And charge from the monstrosity onto the miners. I don't think we win that combat overall, but we could probably... It's maybe 50-50 actually on the first. No, probably not even that. I think we do lose. And wowza, let's look at those save rolls. So yeah, good number of hits, and 10 wounds go through from the first round of throwing stars. Don't save a single 5 up, so they're down to what, like 6, something like that. So yeah, my plan of them being this big sort of roadblock is kind of they're very quickly melting away. So yeah, as I was saying here, like I don't think, well, yeah, no, pretty confident that Monstrosity chews through the miners, but I think I could probably like hold them up for a turn or two, hold the Monstrosity up for a turn or two, could get lucky there, and maybe get the vets involved. I think one thing I'm still getting used to, and you'll see this in this match, is the slow speed of the Dwarves. I'm very used to playing things like Goatman, Abyssal armies with, even Elves armies with just like high mobility. And position like this, like I am, the Dwarves are so slow that like you can't really kind of come up and then come around and get to the flank. It takes you a couple of turns to just trudge across the battlefield. And I think a few different ways as well. The size of the map for 1,000 points can kind of throw you off. But second round of shooting is not quite as bad from the throwing styles. They're still pretty bad. Takes out all but one, which, I mean, I suppose at least that is either going to force my opponent to spend some other shooting on it or just have this as like an annoying little dude who can intercept something, charge into his death. But it is enough, it looks like, for my opponent to kind of sneak through the gap here and get into the flank. Of my range unit. Here I don't think anything better is going to open up, so I do take the shot on long rifles and get a really nice hit there. So 5 on a 2d3, and all 5 of them go through. And the first shot from the flamer, not too bad. But it's at this point that I'm just sort of realizing how much shooting my opponent actually has, even though it's like, oh, well, there's not as many long rifles in this list. Actually, there's just a lot with the 1,000 miles flamers, and, it's really starting, even on this turn one, to do a real number on these dwarves. And in my ignorance, just kind of assumed that these berserkers would be able to get into the flank of the skulkers there, but yeah, they don't have the movement. I think maybe what I'm also realizing or responding to here, looking back, is it's not just the lower speed of the dwarves, but also with the bigger map, you can zoom out further. So I actually zoomed out further than in a 500 point game here, I think. So actually, like when eyeballing a kind of distance, it makes it seem like a shorter distance than it actually is, if that makes sense. So yeah, there you see my opponent just taking the opportunity to take that one single dwarf left out. It does save me from a shot from these long rifles on something else. I'm a little bit concerned. Was concerned about this at some point opening up the long rifles into the copter down here, and at some point these moving around once these units are out of the way to get a shot down here now that their kind of screening units have moved up. But thankfully we don't have to deal with that this side, and actually I can wait, I can hold off on moving this copter until my opponent moves these conscripts at the very least. And I think here, I'm going to take the shot on those conscripts, hit the 6, but my opponent hits 3 6s on the saves. It's a little bit frustrating here, as I think in all of those flamers and long rifles I've shot at so far, they've all got a model left on 1 wound, so only doing half damage to a model is not quite enough, I think. These flamers are left on 3. I did 1 over here. And I think these 2 long rifles are left on 3. So just like 1 more would like take that additional shot off in each of the cases. So you saw my opponent just moves conscripts up onto the point. What's actually quite frustrating is I'm pretty sure they're outside the charge arc of the miners, so I'm not going to be able to charge there, even though we will get first charge. I'm not going to be able to do that to prevent, the option, my opponent charging with the monstrosity. And I think at this point I'm starting to think about, okay, where are these copters actually going to go? Because again, if this was a smaller map, you would kind of like expect them to kind of like dive down and sort of get up here and then just get into the back line and things. I think this is a really smart positioning for my opponent, just kind of making sure that I can't get an easy flank around here, or I'm not even sure I have that distance. Again, the kind of size of the map kind of messing with me a bit. So actually there aren't that many sort of great avenues. My opponent has sort of charge arcs around here, so I'm not even sure if I wanted to get into these flamers. So yeah, I'm sure I could position here. Might mean foregoing a shot from this copter. But yeah, starting to think about where these guys are going to get positioned from turn 1, because this one's playing out slightly differently. I think the first match I was kind of content a bit more to kind of be patient with these, really kind of not, hold them back a bit until second round of charging rather than the first ones. But once again, you see some pretty destructive shooting from my opponent. It's 6 wounds off this unit of miners, and now I'm not fancying their chances against the monstrosity. As the shots continue to rain down, I'm starting to get a little bit impatient. Not impatient, panicked. I can't just sit back and keep taking these shots. So you saw me playing around with a few different options. With this first copter, which is the one with the engineer. In the end, I think this is quite like a sort of decisive point. In the end, I just decide to go here to flank the skulkers. They shouldn't be able to flee from this flank charge here. And it does mean that my opponent isn't going to get either the flank charge onto the rangers there or the front charge onto the berserkers, like neither of which I'm too happy with. Because with their two-hand weapons, they're going to kind of hit toe for toe, particularly if my opponent pops Hex or the Doombell. They're going to, themselves chew through the also very choppy unit of berserkers. And the way things are going, I think I'm really going to need the damage output from this unit. I'm going to need them to stay alive effectively. I think a trade here is not good for me. So yeah, that's where I go there. And with this second copter, I like to do something similar, moving to threaten the flank of the other unit of skulkers. I think this was a bit of a mistake. I guess my thinking was like doubling down on this side if my opponent elects to flee. I mean, they're rats. There's always a chance they'll just continue fleeing. And at least would like get them out, and then I'll be able to kind of move these guys up, even if my copter's stuck. To support there. But of course, I'm an idiot, and even though this unit is fleeing, still kind of weird and a little bit janky, didn't think about the fact that it's going to get stuck on this impassable terrain. So yeah, you'll see that in just a second. And at this point I'm like, well, maybe I just want that anyway, but no, we take the intercept. Because again, my opponent's got hex, two-hand weapons with all these numbers. They're just going to chew through this unit. So yeah, take the intercept there. And I'm hoping my engineer's little copter here should win combat in the flank against them. I can pop the mechanical expertise, get a better defense versus the crack bag. It's got 2 attacks and then I think 4. Do have the option to flee with this unit of miners, but I don't think that really achieves anything. It would mean giving up the point. Just decide to stand firm there. And yet here, my opponent elects to flee. And you see, the flying unit stops short of this. Impossible terrain. It's frustrating because it means, well, yeah, I'm not sure in hindsight ending up over here would be that much better either, but there are no charges available to it. So it's gonna like waste the whole time, kind of sitting there. Can't shoot this turn, obviously. And now start turn 2. I'm gonna just try and take what is available as soon as possible. Get a half decent shot off against that unit again, leaving 1 model on 1 wound. I do think that a few points. I think I probably, if this unit of flamers had been in range, probably would have taken that shot instead. I think, bigger threat, even though they're the kind of much less talked about, less seen, lesser sibling of the long rifles in this matchup in particular. They're really doing a number. And yeah, even though I think that was probably expected, we are able to get mainly 3 wounds from that unit of long rifles, and my opponent fails that first rally test from the skulkers here. So yeah, we're holding firm, I guess. And it's quite hard to tell with my opponent's colours what has gone and what hasn't, but not much luck with the crossbow shooting there. This unit, they have for defense the dwarf crossbows and the two-hand weapons and cruelty from Ranger Captain, so I'm fine. I'm pretty content getting them into combat in certain situations. I'm not kind of determined to have them sit back and I'm not going to outshoot my opponent, so going to move them up, try and get them involved a bit. And my opponent forgoes the option of hexing something there, shooting me with 1,000 mals and scores 8 hits, takes out another 4, and this unit has just kind of almost disappeared. So credit to my opponent, I guess. 1,000 mals is another thing that you don't see that much of. Credit to them for kind of making these things work. But at this point, it really feels like, you know, my slow dwarves are just kind of slowly walking up, not really getting the better in hand-to-hand combat and just getting shot off. So really hoping now that this combat goes well, and yeah, really need to get these to run so this copter can start getting into some of these other units. My opponent being very careful with their positioning here. If you're a slightly newer player, doesn't matter if your flank is exposed if there is no way for the unit to fit into base combat. So by them snuggling up against the Doom Bell there, I mean, these Berserkers wouldn't be able to get up anyway, but it's just good practice there. And again, kind of subject to the slower than expected movement from my troops, nowhere near able to kind of get up and come around here to do anything useful. They just kind of like shuffle up with the vets. Yeah, I don't know if it was like frustration setting in, but maybe like slightly sloppy there, because I think I would have assumed that the flamers wouldn't be able to turn, come all the way to the left and turn and still get the shot on the vets. But especially now that my opponent is moving the conscripts, you'll see in just a second that's exactly what they're able to do. But I mean, no excuses on my part. That's just kind of sloppy play on my part, I suppose. Just I could have moved these a few pixels to the right and made sure that my opponent couldn't shoot them with the flamers. And I'm noticing a kind of a mistake here, because isn't this stone thrower still got a shot, and it doesn't really have a shot on anything of value, or hasn't this whole turn. But now wondering if this has opened up, but I don't even look at it. Instead I'm moving the berserkers. So yeah, slight sequencing mistake from me there. And with the berserkers, I want to move, so I decide to move them so they're not in range, charge range of the conscripts. And if the unit does flee from the copter, they should just be able to get a charge onto the Doom Bell, at least threaten that. And if we don't win this combat, or if they don't flee, then this should at the very least, I think, block this unit from turning. As we get into that combat, we whiff all of our attacks. So, I mean, that's always a risk with like a low number of attacks. Thankfully, we don't take any back. But yeah, it means my opponent passes. But as you see, my opponent didn't have the space to turn. So you can kind of block them turning. So they're going to have another round of combat with the copter in the flank because of where I positioned the berserkers. Yeah, it doesn't go all that well, but we do make the 5-up rally save. I'm kind of able to like stick on that point for a turn longer. And I've got first charge now, and I think what I'm thinking is this unit of 2 crossbowmen and the ranger captain are going to get shot off anyway. They're not going to do much else. I don't even think... I think maybe the flamers do have an option to intercept with the flank, but either way, I'm just going to charge them head into the Doom Bell. I mean, my ranger captain has 4 attacks. There's a chance that could take out the warlock, and that's at least some good points, as we saw with combat against the Doom Bell in my last match, you don't really need, because of the low discipline across the board, you don't need to like take out the, I think it's like an 8 wound model. You just need to be able to win by combat score. And then, you know, that can tip it in your favor, and you can force them to run. Once again, going to take the shots when as they're presented at the start of the turn. Fortunately, we are able to get rid of that one unit of flamers at least. And some good saves against that unit of flamers there. So despite taking a beating and what felt like a couple of like pretty insane rolls early on, as always, it's hard to not get frustrated, but looking back, it all kind of comes out in the wash anyway. And even if it doesn't, it's a dice game. What do you expect? Easier said than done, though. I suppose in contrast to what I was saying about just getting slightly sloppy with my placement here, my opponent really careful and really sort of deliberate. I found there were a lot of times in this game where the thing I wanted to shoot at was like just outside. You see it here, just outside both, just really forcing me to shoot at just like suboptimal things every time. It felt like, you know, I was shooting a lot of things I didn't necessarily, it wasn't ever my first pick, similar with charges, and that just came from just like good solid play from Hiimori here. So here trying out a few different things with this copter. Once again, like my opponent's kind of positioned things. There's no ideal flank or anything I can get here. Don't quite have the movement. I'm worried about getting shot at from these long rifles that kind of somewhat want to protect it. Instead I try to decide to get a little bit bold and decide to move it up here. My opponent hasn't moved either of these conscripts, so even if I end outside the arc here, my opponent's going to be able to get both of these if they want, but then I haven't moved my berserkers. They could kind of come up and help out, and then, you know, the option to flee is always there. I suppose if my opponent elects to charge with both units into the copter, kind of okay with that. It's kind of sacrificing, it's throwing it away, but these big blobs of units are then kind of like out of it. I hope maybe then we can have a better chance of cleaning up with what we have. Maybe not the wisest positioning. Maybe I could have played it safe. In fact, as you'll see in a second, wasn't even able to protect it from the surprisingly fast long rifles who were able to come down and get a shot anyway. And yeah, you kind of see it in not much better choices to shoot at. Just have to take the shot on the conscripts. And I really just don't want another turn of this unit of vets doing nothing. And if my opponent does take out the miners this turn, which is there's a pretty good chance, if they then face charge us, which again is likely, the combat will be happening off the objective. My opponent will be ticking up objective points. So I decide to pop Hunter's Call so they can at the very least move around and threaten the flank here. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing with my berserkers just yet. Probably depends on what my opponent chooses to do with these conscripts. And once again, very careful, deliberate placement from them, blocking the opportunity for a flank charge here. For me thinking that they would come in to, threaten the double team to prevent the flee here. They do that, but that only really offers the front charge with the Berserkers, which I could take, but my opponent still has that one Hex of Ruin, still has the Doombow activation, right? Yeah. And yeah, here you see the long rifles getting the shot that they wanted. I was trying to avoid anyway. Thankfully, we are able to save it. But yeah, so in light of this movement now, I'm not sure if I want to take that front charge. I think again I just move them just outside of the charge arc of the conscripts. Once again, hopefully blocking the skulkers here from being able to turn, not giving them the space as they're pinned against the terrain here, if again this doesn't result in them fleeing. Yeah, and then also threatening the flank of the Doombow. Once again, if this unit goes away. So here we go, really hoping to rout these skulkers. But only able to get one hit through, and even on a 2-up save, 4 hits, my opponent gets 2 through as well. And for whatever reason, that slight manoeuvring from those Berserkers means that they do now have the position to turn, so they're now facing the copter over there, and we get destroyed by the monstrosity over there and run. And here we get 2 wounds through onto our opponent's Warlock, but my opponent's able to want to make it up with the Doombow's crushing charge onto the crossbows. Thankfully, we do make the save, so they're gonna duke it out for another turn. But now, I suppose the Skulkers turning there does offer up this flank charge, which I think we're gonna have to take. I think maybe this not coming over here, if this unit had been taken out, I don't know if I would have been, might have just been able to get the back there, get the flank here, and that would have put me in a really good position. But as it stands, yes, they take the double charge on the copter, and yeah, it's taking this stuff out of it, but I've now just got a lot to kind of chew through, and me making this move, kind of assuming or hoping, I suppose, this copter forces the Skulkers to flee. Maybe not the wisest in hindsight because it didn't pan out, but I kind of feel like at this point in the game is slipping away from me slightly. And when that happens, I think you've kind of got to swing for the fences a little bit more. You can't kind of take the low risk, low reward play. If that kind of makes sense. I think similar with maybe this was just a stupid play, but a sort of bolder play rather than a patient one, with this copter here doing something similar. But yeah, this unit of Skulkers up here rallying. I mean, I think it's was it 7, something like that. So we were lucky that they failed that first one, so it's kind of expected that they would at some point, but then rallying, it's not great for me because that's another very choppy unit. It's able to kind of turn and come down here and deal with the Berserkers and deal with this point, because even though we get the flank into the monstrosity here, I guess we have, one turn in order to win this combat, because we're going to take some hits, and as soon as we start taking hits, the then damage potential very quickly leaves this unit. I think this was a mistake here as well, because of the placement of this terrain, didn't mention it, but you may have noticed that this unit of conscripts actually didn't get into combat with this copter, which is actually worst of both worlds for me, almost. It's like if one of them charged in, I meant I could flee, but forcing both of them to kind of charge in, which would tie both of them up. But now it wasn't able to flee, and it's only tied one up. I think I assumed, or I think I thought that my opponent wouldn't have the space to rotate here though, and would actually be stuck against my unit, because you can rotate through your own units and you can rotate through terrain, but you can't sort of rotate through your enemy's base, if that makes sense. I kind of thought that they wouldn't have the space. And what that means is, because spoiler, they do have the space, I really should have just taken this shot when it was available. So like taking this shot now instead. I assumed that this would be available at any point. But yeah, my opponent, once again, doing like a good job of being very deliberate and just cutting off all of those angles to the most optimal shots. So yeah, you see this catapult is now not able to hit flamers. And once again, I guess the slow speed of the dwarves hurting them a little bit here, because the turn order flipped at some point, so I'll have last turn, but that means my opponent gets first charge. And I think it was this point in the game that I'm realizing that and then regretting passing. So with sort of like nuanced thing, you have the opportunity to flip the turn order by electing not to pass and then just activating all your stuff anyway. You know, 9 times out of 10, it's best to pass and activate later and keep that final turn. But actually, when it's later in the game like this, it is better sometimes to go second to last, which means you get the first charge. And this is one of those cases, because this unit of berserkers, as we see, the skulkers take out the copter. I was a little bit confused because only one wound went through and I thought the copter had more than that. The berserkers do some absolute work against the skulkers, but one of them survives and runs. But yeah, reason the turn order is important here is that my opponent's going to be able to get this charge first without me getting the opportunity to charge into the flank here. Although as we see the outcome of this combat, both commanders going down, leaving the Doom Bell on its full 8 wounds. Not even sure if that would be the desired charge for that unit now anyway. And my opponent gets, all attacks, frenzy with the monstrosity, and 4 of the vets go down. And now there's only 1 unit of conscripts. Kind of hopeful about this, but we're only able to make 1 hit. It wasn't on the charge from the copter. And fleeing there, to be honest, is actually probably not the worst thing in the world. It's probably better that this unit fled at that point. It's only turn 5, opportunity to rally, turn get involved. If it stayed in combat, just probably would have taken even more damage. Here my opponent deciding whether or not to charge in there. I actually did have just the range, but couldn't fit in base contact anyway. They're obviously going to flee from the conscript charge here, but yeah, we really need, I suppose it's coming down to all being on the berserkers, right? We thankfully tagged this claimed this objective to even the objective score 50-50, but that's not going to last long because my opponent has things to move on. There's still a couple of shooting units. It elects not to take the flank here, would get one more combat score, but I suppose decides that this flamer could potentially get a shot off on one of these units, and Monstrosity doesn't need the help against the vets. I suppose as well, if we did get lucky and killed that, it could force them to flee, meaning, actually no, we wouldn't even win because of how we wouldn't even reclaim this because of how the conscripts are there. And yeah, my opponent now kind of swarming on this unit of berserkers who are just, I think, going to have to carry the day for us. And I think I'm looking at this and noticing here that, look, this actually is in range because it's in the yellow, but no, do not trust your eyes, they deceive you. Even though not yellow, the green is obviously touching here. No, it's not in range. I do wish that changed. I feel like if the arc touches, that should be the indication to everyone that, okay, they can shoot it. If it's not touching, not. But yeah, just little SOVL quirks there. And we give, my opponent the universal signal with the spinny of, this is frustrating, I'm not going to get the shot I want. That's what that means when you see your opponent's artillery spinning like that. Because yeah, even how this unit ended up after the flee, I mean, it was just not even able to sneak a boulder through onto the flamers. So pretty unfortunate there, but again, yeah, deserved, because my opponent has been very good with their placement, and 2 shots go through, both wound. That's no more. Copter not going to be able to rally and help out at the dregs of this game. So we even fail rally test there for good measure. The singleton, Ratkin, that was the one up here, did rally. Once again, no good shots for the catapult, so we just go on to the conscripts that are threatening. I don't think they were quite able to get into the rear of the berserkers, but they are threatening the flank there. Although the Doombell crew, who are valiantly fighting on despite their commander's death, is able to get into the rear there. And yeah, my opponent saves everything on the monstrosity. We take another couple of hits. We make the save, but I don't think we've really done that much damage at all to that monstrosity. So we're going to lose that point. And at this point, as you see me frantically trying to hit the save button, yeah, we are not able to do anything, and the game crashes. So from that point, both of us, me and my opponent, are given a victory screen showing these scores. And that's what happens when it's like neither, if one person times out or drops for whatever reason, I believe they wouldn't get a victory screen. So I believe this is what happens when the game, I suppose the service goes down, like the game disconnects. So unfortunately we weren't able to finish this one out. However, I'm very, happy to take the defeat and concede victory here. If it had been maybe a turn or two even earlier than this, I feel like there would have been enough outs. It would have been an uphill battle for me. Would have needed to get lucky in a few places, but maybe there was a chance. But I think from the point where the game crashed and there was probably a slim to none opportunity for me to come back And yeah, you see just here how many more points my opponent has taken off what they have left compared to mine. So yeah, happy to concede this one. Really well played by my opponent. As I said, it kind of just felt that whole game felt like a bit of a uphill battle from the start for me, and probably down to how I deployed. Like thinking back then, so about to say this, but it just felt like I didn't have all that much agency. Maybe trying to create some agency with the weird move with the copter in the middle, but yeah, it just kind of felt like getting shot at, dwarves kind of trudging forward, not having much option due to the limited mobility. And then by the time things got into combat, my opponent, yeah, just had more tools, more options, more units to bear. Let me know what you would have done different, how you would have played it. And yeah, once again, congrats to my opponent. Really good game from them. Yeah, as well, I think maybe like the dice did go their way in a little bit in those early turns, but they also played really well. So you can't complain, I'm sure. It was a good chunk of luck that went my way as well. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. Do all the good stuff for the YouTube algorithms. You know what to do. Really helps out. Check out the Discord. Link to the Discord and to other PvP content creators down in the description. Until next time. Bye bye.